Encounter with Uncle Walter, Cronkite. One memorable event would haunt me in later years. In 1971, the station decided to celebrate its 10th anniversary by recreating during the course of a week each of the preceding years in the station's history by dedicating each evening's programming to a particular year. Ed Bliss, Professor Emeritus of Journalism, had been an associate of Edward R. Murrow and later an editor for the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Station team designing the week of celebratory programming thought it would be interesting to interview Walter Cronkite as the featured guest reminiscing about the year 1968, King's assassination, Robert Kennedy's assassination, the Vietnam War, space flight, urban riots, etc. A graduate student, Ron Grunberg, had been the host of a half-hour weekly news and review program and was tasked, along with me, to go to CBS in New York and interview Walter Cronkite with the idea that Cronkite would play along that it was, once again, 1968. Only with the wisdom of now knowing the outcome of that year's events. Ron and I drove to New York City in my MGC convertible, stayed with his mother in White Plains, and prepared to meet Cronkite the next morning in his office. We lugged the Ampex 601 tape machine and a couple of microphones. Don't know if we found a place to park in Manhattan, but we did, and were escorted to Cronkite's office, more of a book-lined cubbyhole. I believe it was later to be Andy Rooney's office for his opinion pieces on 60 Minutes. Anyhow, Cronkite welcomed us. I set up the tape equipment. Ron relaxed in a tattered cloth office chair. We reminded Cronkite of the concept of the piece. Remember, it is as if it is 1968. I get it, he assured us. The interview went very well until, after we wrapped it up, I was busy packing up the audio gear, and Ron Grunberg was slouched in his tattered chair, shooting the breeze with the king of network news. In almost a passing comment, Ron asked, "So why is it that CBS News always seems to lead with disasters? You know, plane crashes in Czechoslovakia, 90 killed, you know, that kind of stuff." The next thing I knew, Cronkite slammed his fist down on the desk, stood to full upright position, and screamed, "What the hell has that damned Ed Bliss been teaching you kids?" Ron wasn't slouching anymore, stumbling for words. No, I didn't mean, I was just noticing that I was now scrambling to get the equipment gathered together to make a speedy exit. Ron was now helping in an effort to expedite our departure. While I can't swear to it, I think Uncle Walter was still railing at us as we headed for the elevator, shouting, "And you tell that Ed Bliss," and I think the elevator doors closed as I could hear him say, "and don't come back." We didn't waste any time getting back to D.C. with Ron, trying to figure out how he was going to smooth over his faux pas with his mentor-instructor Ed Bliss. I don't really recall any negative feedback, except for perhaps Gene Potter, the program director, and Susan Harmon, the soon-to-be station manager, saying something like, "Oh no, well that's not good." Nothing much was ever said about the experience again. Until about 30 years later, Pat Maloon Brown, a.k.a. Katie Daly, and I were guests of the Marine Corps Commandant for the Marine Barracks Friday evening music program and parade. Walter Cronkite was the guest of honor and would be conducting the Marine Band in one or two numbers. As guests of General Mundy, Pat and I were invited to a cocktail reception prior to the event. And there was a receiving line for the general, his wife, and guest of honor, along with Mrs. Cronkite. We got in line to shake hands with the former anchor of the CBS Evening News. As the uniformed aide introduced us, "Mr. and Mrs. Cronkite, this is one of Washington Radio's public affairs producer, Katie Daly, and her husband, Bill Brown." We sidestepped a little to shake hands and chit-chat. I used the opportunity to say, "Hello, Mr. Cronkite. You may not remember me, but about 30 years ago, I accompanied one of Ed Bliss's students to interview you in your office at CBS about," and even before I could complete the sentence, Cronkite replied, in that Mr. Mooney-like voice of the old Lucille Ball comedy show days. "Oh, I remember you," to which I think I sheepishly replied while moving along in line, "It wasn't me who asked the question." Reminding Uncle Walter of his unfortunate encounter with Ed Bliss's student and tech guy 30 years earlier didn't seem to affect his ability to conduct a couple of numbers with the Marine Band that evening. In fact, I think his conducting motions were particularly exaggerated and flamboyant, almost as if he were beating his old friend Ed Bliss over the head with his baton.